Hi, hello again. Welcome back to the Unspun Yarn. And this week we are starting off our inaugural episode called BLEEP the Patriarchy. Yes. If you're not familiar with, and I don't know how, unless you've been living under a rock, if you are not familiar with the Patriarchy Drinking Game, this is the next level. um, this is my co-host in the down there, Aemy Blackfyre. You know her from all the places. Aemy Blackfyre YouTube, John Webster Film, uh, the blog. What's your blog's name, Amy?
Aswaf Chinese Lit.
That's the one. Aswaf Chinese
Lit. Just Aemy Blackfyre's blog, if you will.
Aemy Blackfyre's blog. Links to that and all these lovely people's content in the description. To my right, left, right, the other way, I've got All Hail the Night's Queen. Thank you for joining us tonight, Geaullie. This is the first time. Welcome to the channel. And returning guest and lovely human, one of my favorite people, we've got Manaro from ManaroGeekTV. So, yeah, we, and I say we broadly being women, those of us who were born with a uterus, have just celebrated our 100 years of having the right to vote in the United States. It's been a long road, baby. So yes, this is the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment this year, 2020. It may have sucked for a lot of things, but hey, we did get that right. So, and also this year, 2020, an election year, a sacred year, shall we say. We have finally broken another one of those glass ceilings, ladies. We finally have a woman one heartbeat away from being the president of the United States. Our brand new Vice President, Kamala Harris. And that's why we're kind of doing this, our inaugural stream about our lovely inauguration. So, ladies, what do you think about this? How excited were you when the votes finally came in? Amy, go ahead. Yeah. I know you've got something to say.
Yeah, it was a wow. Was that a week? I was Kamala was originally my candidate for president when the primaries were going on. So when I heard that she had been picked, I mean, I was pleased as peach. So I was very excited for that. And I think even better than her being a woman, she's a woman of color and also mixed, which is very important, right? So her father's from Jamaica, her mom came from India, seeking a better life and education. And cheers. I actually read the book that she came out with, and so I learned a lot about how she got inspiration from her parents, and I think she herself is very inspiring, and I'll go into her biography a little more into the stream, but I think that Kamala Harris is someone who is, her campaign slogan was Kamala for the people, and I really definitely feel like she's fighting for me individually. She has a little bit of that Barack Obama talking directly to you kind of feel to her. So obviously nothing like him. He's got that magic. But I was really excited for it, and I was also just excited that it'll be over soon. We're also going to talk about the suffragette movement, and also, I always want to put the caveat on it, and I'm sure Manaro can speak to this as well as Geaullie, that white women got the vote, but with Jim Crow laws, I'm from the South, it was a longer fight for women of color, and white women and women of color, even to this day, are not always working together, and that's always a mistake. But we'll get into the racial the racial problems with the suffragette movement later in the stream, but this is also a time for celebration. As you can see, the fireworks in our thumbnail. So we're also here to celebrate, but we're also here to say bleep the patriarchy.
Bleep it. Bleep it, y'all. Yes. And Manaro, what's up? What's up, girl?
Hey,
Where
first, thank you for inviting me. Thank you for allowing me to be a part of this inaugural stream. So I echo a lot of what Amy said. I knew, I just like knew the minute that Joe Biden announced Kamala, like they were going to win. I just knew, because it's the perfect match, the perfect marriage, the perfect team for us to enter the new year with, as compared to what we've had, not only this past year, for many, many decades. And I think they represent a lot of what America truly is, but not only because it's a man and a woman, because it's a white person and a person of color, but it's also generational, right? Because he's older and she's a little bit younger, and they come from different backgrounds. And so their diversity, the diversity of them together, I think is a perfect match, because they both have a lot to bring to the table. Him being older and more experienced, and having a better understanding of certain topics and subject matters, and her also bringing to the table a lot of issues that not only affect women, but also people of color and immigrants, right?
Yes.
And so I think she is going to be the voice that he needs to hear, in order for him, that's going to drive a lot of the policies that he's going to be introducing and putting forth, that hopefully, if we have a 50-50 Senate majority, 50-50 Senate, a lot of those policies, we will see them put to place. I don't expect that all things will be solved, but it will be a great step towards a lot of change to come in our country moving forward.
That's a good way to put it, Manara. Moving forward. That's something. It seems like it's taken forever. And I know the last 4 years, at least for me, have seemed like 40. But now we kind of are cautiously breathing a sigh of relief, because it's not January 20th. We're still breathing, taking those nice cleansing breaths, and just, there's a little bright spot on the future that we can look forward to. And I haven't gotten to Geaullie yet. I will get to you in a minute, girl, because I know you've got some things to say. I wanted to take it back to the Democratic debates, and when we were watching that huge field of candidates, and Kamala was the one who was bringing it to Joe Biden, bringing it like, Mr. Biden, Mr. Vice President, tell me about this. Remember those busing rules, those busing laws that you helped enact back in. I was that little girl. And that very much speaks to what you were saying, Manaro, about bringing that voice and bringing that lived wisdom that she has had, that experience that she has had, to the halls of power. And we, it's not perfect. It's not going to be perfect. But I do feel like we have some good energy to work with. And I just want to bask in the glow for a minute, just breathe it in. So, Geaullie, girl, speaking from an outside the United States perspective, in case everyone doesn't know, Geaullie lives in the Netherlands. And so she has a little, she can give us the world view perspective, because even though, you don't have actual real everyday stakes in the politics and things that are going on in the United States, the fact that the person in the White House can, it's a mover and shaker and a world power, and it affects everyone in some way. So Geaullie, what did you think? How did you feel when when the results came in?
I was relieved, because even though I have no say in the politics in the United States do affect a lot of the world. So the policies of the orange buffoon have done a lot of damage to the world. So that 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 you are probably going to get the crazy guy out of the White House is good for the world. And I think it is also good that you have the first female vice president. That is awesome. Like the Netherlands, we never had a female prime minister or anything. We had a queen, that was the thing. We had a couple of queens, but we never had a female prime minister. So, and I think, no, I know for sure that all of our prime ministers were white dudes. So,
yeah, well, I'll drink to that.
Bleep the patriarchy.
Yeah.
Bleep it, y'all. Bleep it.
But yeah, they also think that it's good with the voting rights and the women's suffrages was an ongoing thing for the Black and Chinese, Japanese communities in the United States. It's like the Voting Rights Act of 1965, I think it was.
I believe
that
it was
was
66.
Okay.
Anyway.
Could be 66, but that Voting Rights Act really ushered in universal suffrage, which is also with a slight caveat still, because I think in a couple of states you can't vote when you have been in prison for a felony or something like that, and that is disproportionately affecting
though
minorities.
I mean, it is, you can petition to have your right to vote reinstated. So I mean, it is a process that is available in the United States. It's not that easy, but it can be done, and it takes a lot of hard work and diligence. I actually have friends who have been incarcerated, and it took a lot of work. It took diligence, but they had their right to vote restored. Their full rights of citizenship were restored. So
yeah, and I vote in California, and we actually just voted through a proposition to reenfranchise all of those who have served their time. It's not meant to be a permanent loss of your civil freedoms. No. Also, my mom, who's a history buff, who's in the chat, said it was 1965 for the Voting Rights Act, and then the Civil Rights Act was 64 a year before that. They had to kind of split it up to try and get it all passed.
Can't do too much at once, man. Can't do too much at once. White men might get scared.
I know, we've got to ease the men into these things, right? It's a fragile. And Geaullie, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but you are also mixed race like Kamala Harris. So how does this feel for you, having someone up there that represents multiple communities?
I think it's a good thing. I think representation is always a good thing. If you don't see like people in power that look like you. It's not always a job that you think as a little kid you can aspire to be.
Right.
So I think it's a good thing for representation, and it's also a good thing that I think a lot of people get the opportunity to see that, like, people of color are capable. We can do that shit. So and I think a lot of people's problems with women or women of color, of people of color, are also for because of exposure.
Yes.
People haven't exposed to people of color in certain ways. Like, oh, you see them on the football field, you see them, singing, but you don't see a lot of powerful people of color. Like,
Right.
still less than should be, but yeah.
Yeah. Representation matters.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
good thing. Very good thing.
Yep. Well, I just want to pop this up on the screen real quick since Stephen jumped the gun on that. I was going to bring it up later. That's fine. Fun little factoid. When the state of Wyoming, of all places in the United States, Wyoming entered the Union, women had the right to vote there. Wyoming was the first state to have women's suffrage. That is correct.
Yeah, and I think they had a female representative from there that was really kick-ass and well before her time, and she was really pushing the men in the House and Senate to get this done. So they also had this very strong female politician. And I went to Wyoming for a conference and found it really strange that was the state where it came from, because it's quite a conservative state. But there are also places, there's Kansas also a while back had a history of a lot of liberal policy. Same thing with Nebraska. So, speaking as someone who's liberal, who came from the South, we're not all Republicans, I promise. There are these little blue dots around there. And so, when I was voting in Oklahoma, my home state, my vote really didn't feel like it counted, but I still got out and did it. And I hope that everyone watching who is able to register to vote in the U.S. Did vote this time around and will continue to vote, because it is important. And you may not feel like your vote counts, but especially on those propositions and local elections, they can be very close, and you really can tip the scales. And in the end, it's your civic duty. I mean, duties aren't necessarily something we do happily. It's something that we have to do.
Great or small, we all must do our duty. Yes. And that seemed to be part of the trend that I was seeing in, the history of women's suffrage. It was these outlying areas, the territories, the western part of the United States, places like New Zealand and Australia and the British Empire, Canada, all these places that were further away, territorial, so to speak, who, were being less settled. Women there we are doing exactly equal work. We are building this state. We are building this country. We are building this area side by side with the men. We are doing everything. We are fighting. We are surviving. We are, equal partners in work. We should be equal partners in representation in suffrage and having a voice. And that part of the country would not have been settled without having these strong women in place to, run the ranch or run the store or till the fields or everything that, their partner was doing. So it meant more, it seemed like it would be crazy if, like, oh yes, I have the voice and you have no say in anything. And they're like, well, okay, good luck tilling those fields, or, good luck running that cattle. I'll just be over here knitting some socks. So, but, it was like a time and a place that it was the time, it was the place for these actions to happen. Another thing that they kind of went hand in hand with at this time was the Prohibition. It took me a second, sorry, but Prohibition was very concerned about the state of the welfare of women this was the story, or the whatever, like, oh, all these men are just getting drunk and not taking care, not working, not taking care of their families. This is just a bad thing. So it was a little bit of a crossover at that time too, between Prohibition and the women's suffrage movement. Not they were totally separate issues, obviously, but you still had people talking about these types of things. So the condition of women in the United States and abroad was a topic, so that's, you have a lot of these strong women who, like, I think it was who was the lady that would go in and chop up the bars and stuff. Anyway, but she
Stanton?
also worked on
Is that Stanton? Her last name? Maybe not.
Oh, I'm terrible.
But I do know who you're talking about. Yeah, women were unfortunately a big part of the Prohibition movement, which bleep that, am I right? And those in the chat were saying my had a lot of ambient noise, so I switched from this external mic to my headphones. Please let me know if this is better, and I'm sorry about that. Manaro, it looked like you were going to say something.
Yeah, go ahead, Manaro.
Just let me get my thoughts together. First thought, I have 3 thoughts. First thought was, I think it speaks I think Joe Biden picking Kamala Harris speaks volume, because even though she eviscerated him during the debates, he was willing to not let that, get in his feelings, and understand that he actually needed somebody who will, tell him, when he's wrong, and who's not afraid to put him in his place if he's stepping, if he's veering off course, right? And so the fact that he didn't like let that sway him, and that it tells me that he's open to criticism. He's willing to listen to an opposing view, and he's willing to work with somebody, even if he doesn't necessarily agree. And you need that in leadership. It shouldn't be my way all the time. You need to be able to listen to opposing views, and listen to people who don't necessarily agree with you, because that's what allows you to take in new information and then get a bigger picture in order to make a more informed decision. So I appreciated that about Joe Biden. My next thought was on the people who have felonies who don't get the right to vote. To me, that just speaks to one of the tactics that was used as a form of voter suppression, right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Voter suppression is its own separate topic, because there was a lot of things that Republican, and I hate to just group them all together because I know it's not all Republicans, but the Republican Party, led by Mr. Atwater, and if you don't know who Mr. Atwater is, I Google him, right? He's the one that spearheaded a lot of the things that we are now suffering. Well, I'm going to say we are now suffering. He spearheaded a lot of those new changes that you see, and it affected our policies from the time Reagan came into office. From the time Reagan came into office, a lot of the policies and laws and everything that you see that are happening, I guess, still affecting us to this day. Mr. Atwater was the architect of that, and voter suppression being one of the number one things that was the one of the major pieces that led to that. And the last thing I wanted to make a quick point on is racism. Racism, to me, from my own personal experience and from what I've observed, it's an issue of fear and control, right? There's an issue of fear of the unknown, right? Because this is something that's different than you. And so because it's different and you don't know how to navigate it, your instinct is to be afraid of it. And if you're afraid of it, you either want to attack it or stay away from it, right?
Right. That fight or flight instinct.
Correct. And on the flip side of that, it's control, right? Because you have a feeling of superiority. And because you feel superior, you feel the need to exact control over those that you feel are inferior. So to me, those are the two main things that in my experience and from what I've observed are some of the two main driving things that drive racism, especially here. And I can't speak for other countries, but I can speak for here in the United States because that's where most of my experiences have been, right? And I've traveled in a lot of different countries, and I can't say in all of the countries that I've traveled that I've ever experienced any direct racism. It might have been overt, covert, but it wasn't overt and it wasn't direct. But I can't say that I actually experienced, but I have experienced it here in the country that I was born in, here in the States. And the last point that I want to make is women here in the United States, we were, as advanced as we are way behind in a lot of social issues, right? Yeah. Because women have been in power for centuries. In Europe, in Africa, even in all the way in the East. If you go through history, there have been plenty of women monarchs, plenty of women who were tribal leaders, plenty of women who led either their tribes or their countries, right? It's when the first settlers came here to the States, I guess they felt the need to try to change that whole ideology of women having any kind of power. Patriarchy, I guess, was the main driving force for that. So have a sip, right? And so again, that I'm gonna put that also in the fear and control bucket as well, because there probably was a fear of feeling emasculated if a woman was to be in charge, because all of those settlers came from Europe and they have had the experience of having both women monarchs and male monarchs, right? And so they wanted, we could talk about all this, why they came. The main reason that is touted is for religious freedom, right? But I think also that speaks to also the leadership that they were under, and they wanted to change that. They wanted to have their own set of rules and laws under which they lead, right? And they use religion as a way of subverting, take another sip, patriarchy in a society, right? So they use religion as a way of trying to exert some sort of control over women. So that's the last point I wanted to make.
Yeah, and I also obviously, I just wanted to speak. She mentioned women ruling in the East. I have to talk about Empress Wu Zetian, like it's like a knee-jerk reaction. There was, against Empress Wu, there was also this rewriting of her history so that we can tell during the time that she ruled, it was actually quite a peaceful time in China. Things were going well. But if you read the records, which were written by men, you would have no idea that that was actually the case. So if you kind of look at how much grain was produced, the lack of major natural disasters, this kind of stuff, and the policies that she had, it was not a bad time. And yet the way that she's written about later, same thing with Empress Dowager Cixi, who I'm currently writing about, comparing her to Cersei Lannister in Game of Thrones. There's also this, blaming everything that happens kind of on the woman. And so, yes, you're absolutely right, Manaro, that we have women that have ruled throughout history, but we also have to realize that whatever we read about them is directed by men, and what they kind of want to control, the control of women, right, is to control our narrative around women. And I do want to also remind us that the Civil Rights Act, according to the Supreme Court of the United States, is unnecessary now. So it is also not quite in effect like it was before. And you have all of these, the second that happened, all of these southern states making these state laws about ID, about verifying signatures. This is the type of voter suppression that Manaro was alluding to. And we have to also remember the famous quote from Lyndon Baines Johnson when he signed the Voting Rights Act. He said, "We've lost the South for 40 years. And, other than Georgia, it's going on 50. So, that's when the parties, it's oversimplifying to say the parties switched, but I don't think it's incorrect to say that. My grandparents and great grandparents were registered Democrat and voted Democrat, and all of a sudden in the 60s, for some reason, they were Republicans. Gee, why was that?
Why did that happen? Why did that happen?
So it's a coincidence, Nessie. Don't worry about it. So there is also this policy directly affecting the way then that people vote, and state policies, right? States' rights is what they always tout until we legalize marijuana, and then all of a sudden, whoa, slow your roll there, right? But we have these states, it's harder to vote in Mississippi, than it is in California. There's only one reason for that, and it is racism. And if you also notice, women, especially Black women, vote or are like a 93% voting rate or something like that. So they also get out and vote because they've had to fight for it. All 4 people in this panel have had to fight our ancestors had to fight for the right to vote, and 2 of us got it sooner and easier, right? So when you have to fight for something so hard, when you finally get it, then you're going to cherish it, right? And so the voting rates of women, are so high because of that. And I also want to call out white women because in 2016, they voted for Trump in more numbers. And if more white women if your Republicans stayed home, or more Democratic white women would have gotten out and held their nose and voted for Hillary, even though she wasn't the right woman, if they would have gotten out and done that, we wouldn't have even had to do this 4 years. Thank you for coming to my rant. Sorry, Geaullie, you've been waiting this whole time. I could tell you've been waiting to say something.
One of many rants, I'm sure. Before we go any further, I did want to address something. Our good friend Anna in the chat had a statement, which I think we should just discuss. That yes, we do acknowledge that there is divide in the Democratic Party between the centrists and the leftists. It is there. We know it. We're not saying that that everything is perfect and rosy and wonderful. We know that there's a lot of work, a lot of work that's left to be done. But I did want to acknowledge that statement, Anna. Yes, we do acknowledge that this has happened. Not great. We got to stick together. We all have to stick together, left, center, right-ish, whatever you want to call it. But we have to stick together. Otherwise, once we start fighting one another, we'll have another, orange kumquat in office, and things will be worse. So thank you.
But I think that the Democratic Party tent is much bigger and more inclusive than the Republican one. Oh,
absolutely.
So I'm not discounting Anna's point, but I am saying that it's really obvious which party is not fighting for people of color. The other might make a lot of promises and not keep all of them, but at least the Democratic Party, I'm registered in Democrat. That's my party. And at least, we have people of color and LGBTQIA plus people included in our party. And you just look at any picture of a young Republicans club and a young Democrats club in a college and notice how diverse or lack thereof it is. And so, unfortunately, we have a binary choice in America. So once we get in power, we can negotiate how center or left we want to be. But I've seen a lot of people use the point that Anna makes to just throw up their hands and not go out and vote and stay home and cry because Bernie didn't get the nomination, when they should have said, all right, we'll get him next time, and gone out and voted for the Democrat. So that's just my point.
I think it's a matter of messaging, right? I think everybody actually does want essentially the same thing. It's just that they have a different way about how the message is put out there, right? And I'm not registered Republican or Democrat. I'm an independent. But me personally, I tend to lean center left for a lot of things, but I also lean left in other things. And some things I lean more right. It depends on the topic, right? But me personally, if it benefits the whole, right? If it benefits the whole, I'm all for it. Like, if it's not gonna hurt me, it's not gonna hurt me in any way. It's not gonna affect me in such a way where I won't be able to live my life, freely, then I don't see a problem with it, right? And I think I think the problem that the Democrats as a whole they are facing is they have a problem with messaging. And that is where I give Republicans credit, because they know how to have a message and stick to the script, right? Democrats don't know how to have it figured out to do that yet. And I think they need to come together and listen, not just talk, listen to each other, right? And I think the problem is you have a lot of old heads and you have a lot of new people coming in, and the new people that are coming in, they have this whole direct messaging that they have, but they're not understanding that, you have a lot of old heads, because whether you want to believe it or not, the majority of the Democratic Party are between the ages of anywhere between maybe 35 and maybe 70 and 80. And most of them, and those older people, you don't want to lose, keep them out of the messaging, right? You want to be able to speak to them as well as speak to those that are closer to your age group. So there has to be some sort of a unified message that you can put out there and stick to a script. They would do well probably to do a lot of focus groups that includes both all of these different generation and ages in these focus groups, so that they can come up with a better way of presenting the message. Case in point, Barack Obama had, and I'll shut up. Barack Obama did an interview today where he stated that there needs to be a different way of saying defund the police, because when you say defund the police, you turn a lot of people off. Maybe say something like reform the police, right? And Cori Bush, who just got elected, which I'm really happy about, said, well, she came and snapped back, right? And I think it was more of an emotional response than actually listening to what he said, right? She came back and says, well, it's a mandate. It can't be she said that it's a mandate. That cannot be a mandate. You know what I mean? Saying defund the police cannot be your mandate, okay? Because at the end of the day, we do need some sort of public safety.
Right.
We do need that. But reform it. Maybe putting the message as a reform of the police is a little bit more palatable for those people, in order to get them on board with the message. It's still it's for the same reason, right? Yeah. When you say defund, you're talking about taking money away. You're talking about doing away with. When you say reform, you're talking about change, and that's what essentially everybody wants is change. So that's why I say the Democrats need to figure out a better way of messaging the policies that they want to actually, put out, that speak to the working class and that speak to working families, because that's who they're supposed to represent. And I think they have a difference of messaging, and I think it's probably because it's a generational thing, right? They haven't spoken each other's language yet, and they need to learn how to speak each other's language. And the only way they're going to do that is to actually listen to each other, right? And I'll shut up now.
Oh, no. Always so insightful, and that's one of the reasons that I love to have here. You bring so much insight into this. So, I mean, yes, the language we use around these things, the party of the right has spent quite, I mean, untold millions of dollars in spinning the picture that they want to present, because people of a certain age or experience, if they don't know that, oh, okay, socialism, let's throw the dirty word out there. Oh, that's what they had in Russia. We can't have that. No, we're Americans. We're patriots. We don't believe in that here. And I'm like, au contraire, my friends. Let's turn back the hands of time to another period when the United States was in deep shit. Let's call it the Depression. That's a nice word. We're all depressed now. We all have depression. So Franklin Delano Roosevelt enacted, some groundbreaking, just crazy idea that, we really need to help. We really need to have a safety net for people who are old and infirm and they can't work. We need to have some type of security for these people, a socialist security system. And this will help everyone, because then the people that are still working, they're banking toward their future, that they know that they're going to be taken care of, and so on and so on and so on. And now there are so many people that are living and drawing on Social Security that don't realize that they're engaging in socialism. And these are a lot of the same people who are voting against these type of social safety nets. Come on, people, look in the mirror.
and also to make a point, a lot of people who live in certain rural areas also benefit from social programs. For a group of people who talk so much against socialism, you benefit from socialism every single day. You participate in socialism every single day. The only difference is we are just not a communist. We're not communists, right? We actually have a say in in our participation in this socialist program. But my thing is, why wouldn't you want that? Why wouldn't you want that?
I'm happily
before the 80s, did you know that community colleges were free? Before I'm telling you, when this Atwater dude came in and Reagan came in, like they screwed it up. Community colleges and state colleges were free. The only colleges that you actually paid for were private universities.
Let's take a big long drink for old Ronnie. You're an asshole, and I'm glad you're dead.
And he and Nancy enabled him.
God.
Trust me, those of you watching, we have on the schedule, we're gonna have an episode about internalized misogyny, because women feed back into the patriarchy and think that they're a special woman and that maybe they'll be treated well if they just aren't one of those hairy-legged feminists. You screw us over, okay?
That's it. Yes. Don't have, be subservient to your man. That's it.
Geaullie, please. You look like you've been wanting to say something.
Let it out,
Go ahead, girl. Let it out. What is it like to live in a socialist country, Geaullie?
In a neoliberal state, just like the rest of the West. We like 80s started neoliberalism with Reagan, with Thatcher, and it hasn't been good, because neoliberals only care for companies, they don't care for citizens, and they've been basically undressing the social welfare system in every country in the West. Almost.
Yeah, it all comes down to money, doesn't it, people? Who has it? Who needs it? How are we going to spend it?
That's why I am a socialist and an anti-capitalist. And I will also want to say something that Russia, Leninism wasn't communism, wasn't socialism. Stalinism wasn't communism, wasn't socialism. Maoism wasn't communism, wasn't socialist. It was totalitarian. It was so that, and also like there were so many things. So I don't know. The women rulers. No, that's too far back. Let's not do that. But what were? Sorry, lost my train of thought there for a bit. Okay, what were we talking about? Sorry, help remind me.
We got into systems of government and social security. We were kind of going all over the place, but in a good way.
Oh yeah, they called FDR a socialist. He was. They called him a radical socialist.
The banks got bailed out in the economic crisis. That is kind of a bit of socialism, because it damn sure isn't capitalism. Because capitalism says if you
let them go.
Yeah, what happened to the competition? You know, they should be allowed to fail. Yeah,
free market. Free market. That's just how it works.
Capitalism. So if you bail out your banks, that is socialism. And why is socialism okay for big corporations, but not for people who really need it? Because if a bank fails, you know what? There'll be another bank. Like.
Why do you think they were? Why do you think back in I think it was in the 90s, either in the 90s or the 2000s, I can't remember, to be quite honest, but there was a lot of legislation that was being pushed by lobbyists to have corporations recognized as persons, right? As a means of them to be able to enjoy some of the benefits, right? They get the benefits of doing their taxes and being and all of the tax benefits and credits of being a corporation, but also enjoy some of the benefits that in case something goes wrong, now they're recognized as a person.
Mm-hmm. And it also helps them from liability. It makes it harder to sue them. But we're getting a little off. I did just want to talk slightly a little bit about Kamala Harris, since it is VEEP the Patriarchy.
Who? Okay. I got to put this up. This is from your mom. So, yes.
Oh, yes. My mama raised me right when it comes to Reagan. Mm-hmm. Yes.
You and I lived it. You and I lived it.
My mom. Trust me, it was like, horror stories before bedtime were about Reagan when I was growing up. So my mama raised me right as a feminist and a liberal. But I do want to say a little bit about Kamala Harris. Reading her biography or autobiography that she wrote kind of reminded me a little bit of myself, in that she was raised to be politically active. So her parents actually met at University of California, Berkeley, at a political rally. So her parents met, with the signs and the hell no, we won't go, and so she was basically from. Oh no. Oh gosh, am I back? Okay. Whew, okay. Can you hear me? Am I good? So from the time she was a toddler, she was going to political rallies with her parents. And then eventually her parents did separate, and she and her sister were being raised by a single mom. So she saw a strong woman who got her education and was working, and also was raising her two daughters, to also realize that women are just as capable as men. And actually, I think all of us on this panel and those with uteruses in the chat can relate to, we've had to work harder, actually. So sometimes we're a little overqualified for the things that we do as well, because we've had to prove ourselves extra.
Sorry, can we also show some love for the women without uteruses? Because there are women with uteruses.
Yes. Trans, yes. Okay, and we're going to have a whole episode. Nessie and I have a great episode planned on transphobia and turfism. But trans women are women, and we embrace them with open arms and loving, loving hugs. to join the feminist movement, because they also are they also get discriminated against, obviously, for how they present themselves to the world. And so they are absolutely a part of the feminist movement. So I absolutely want to recognize that. At the same time, I swear I'm not a TERF person. I swear I'm not. At the same time, growing up a girl is the childhood of growing up a girl, right? Like being just on I remember being on at recess, I would tell a joke and no one would laugh. And then a little boy would tell like literally the same joke and everyone would laugh. Like this kind of bullshit, right? My mom can share a lot of horror stories with you guys. But being told in Sunday school to let the boys have a chance to answer the question. And then if none of them raise their hand, then you, little girl, can raise your hand. This kind of patriarchal bullshit is what I'm talking about. Boo! Bleep that.
Boo.
But so Kamala Harris was raised by a mother who actively told her you can be anything you want to be, and people will tell you you can't, and that is because they are afraid of what you can do. And so she worked hard. And as AG of California, we were talking about the 2008 crisis. It is true that the banks got bailed out, but people also got bailed out because they were giving them, faulty loans for their houses, and they would have been homeless. They would have been out of their house because of that. And there was one city, I believe it's Fremont. I'm sorry, you guys could Google that. There was one city in California where 45% of homeowners were at risk of losing their homes. And Kamala Harris, as the AG, was constantly fighting back to get a better deal for California. And so, I just moved to California, but I still feel proud as a currently as a Californian for her to have come from there. She comes from Oakland, and she also came from a very diverse community. And I do want to say her name, Kamala, means a lot of things, but it also means lotus, which is a very important symbol in Buddhism. And it's also the feminine form of one of the incarnations of Vishnu. So that asshole Republican that was like, Kamala, Lama, Lama, whatever, it's as if someone's named Jesus and you can't pronounce it, okay? It's a godly name. It's a holy name in Hinduism. And how dare you, sir? Okay, thanks for coming to my TED Talk.
Yeah, Mark Meadows can burn in hell.
Yes, that's him.
Well, I also want to say that Kamala had a great interview with what's his name, Trevor Noah, right? And she said something that's very poignant, right? She said, your name is the first gift that your parents give you when you're born. And so to make fun of someone's name is an attack on their identity, right? Because your name is part of how you identify yourself. Because usually one of the first things most people introduce themselves with is their name, right?
It's the first thing you learn.
Right. And so I think I think that was a very important thing to make, something to say and something to really think about, because, until she said that, I never really thought about it that way, that the first gift that you get from your parents is your name.
Yep. Before you even go home from the hospital or wherever you're born. Yes, that is they're thinking about your name long before you ever make an appearance. My parents thought long and hard, and yet this is what I got. So but yeah, it is. And just to negate a person's whole identity in that manner, to that's just a small man. That's just a small man, a little boy, name calling from the playground. That's all it is. Like banana fana, faux fana, Kamala Mala, whatever.
And I want to reiterate, he knows how to. And I want to reiterate, he knows how to say her name. He knows how to. He's been with her for years, and he was playing to the base. And the vote, the election hadn't happened yet, and it sure got a lot of applause from the from the audience, didn't it?
Well,
so
I tend to well, let me say, I've watched a lot of interviews with that particular sect of our country. I've watched a lot of interviews and interactions with people trying to understand them. God bless. All I got is, as they say in the South, God bless their hearts. That's all I got. In that respect.
Yeah,
So
I think we know what that means.
Yes, it's
God
a
bless
common.
them.
Yeah, God bless their hearts means yeah, and there's this common thing that they have what is it? They're kind of left out economic grievances, this and that. Economic grievances means they think immigrants are taking their jobs, which is racial. Let's be honest about this. This has nothing to do with the economy. This has all to do that they're mad that their neighbors aren't white anymore. That's what's changing.
Exactly
And they'll also say demographic shifts. Come on, let's stop using these nice words and let's call it what it is.
yeah. I have a question for you ladies with respect to Kamala. Now, what do you think what policies do you think she will push for outside of what they've already mentioned with respect to the coronavirus, the economy, and national security, and systemic racism or the justice system? What other policies do you see her pushing for, or what other policies do you think that she should push for?
I think she will
that's
be.
a very good question, Manaro. Go ahead, Geaullie. Go ahead.
I think she can be big on environment, because she is a very big she thinks the environment is very important, and I think she fought for the environment on multiple occasions. So I think that is one of the big points for her to be more into the environment, environmentally friendly. So that.
Yeah. Good point.
Yeah.
Got to clean up the house.
I think, yeah, and Manaro mentioned criminal justice. I actually think that her record has been maligned and misrepresented. She's always called a cop constantly and this and that. People also, do your research. They say she threw parents in jail. This is not correct. This is a right-wing talking point. Please do your research and look at the sources that you're reading from, because just because it's on the internet, does not mean it's true. So please really do your research on that. Her record in the criminal justice reform is actually for getting more people of color with minor offenses out, not putting more people in jail. So I want to be very clear about that. And I think something interesting is that Biden has been very wishy-washy on the legalization of marijuana, and I think Kamala is going to be the one to tip him. I think she's seen how people of color have been thrown in jail with having a joint on them. This is insane. I won't say specifics, but I have someone in my family who is white. Obviously, do I look anything but to you, right? I have someone in my family who's white who was caught with some marijuana and got out pretty easily. And why is it that people of color are then thrown in there? The people have been talking about the drug war in the chat. That was to specifically lock up people of color, because for some reason the judge is very lenient with white people, right? So I think she is going to be about criminal justice reform through these things that you should, but you may not necessarily connect them, like legalization of marijuana. You just think it's going to be about drug policy, but that's also about over-incarceration. We also have to remember that other than federal penitentiaries, prisons are privatized. People are making money off of putting Black and brown people in jail. And my home state, Oklahoma, incarcerates per capita more women than any of the other states. So also it's unkind. There are mothers and grandmothers that are being put in jail who could go through some kind of, treatment or, community service and go home to their children. And yet we're putting them in jail and leaving these children to be raised by other members of the family or even orphaned. And I just think that Kamala understands that. And she also, being raised pretty solidly, even lower middle class, by a single mother, she recognizes how important the woman is in the household, and how important it is that we empower women and that we lift them up. So I think equal pay is also something that she is going to fight a lot for as well.
Yeah, and to jump off from what Amy said, you can take a look at one of the latest wars on drugs, the opiate war, and how, hey, look at this. Look at how it's affecting suburbanites and a lot of white people, middle class Americans. Oh, so we're treating these types of offenders differently, aren't we? With rehab and reform and trying to get them back into society. We're trying to help these offenders, and they're viewed differently than, say, some young African American or Latin American who may have been caught up in a street sweep, and
it's about compassion, and they only seem to have compassion for a certain type of people. And a lot of these people, I'm Buddhist, so I'm not Christian, so I will say that right now. I am crapping on Christians a little bit. A lot of people who claim to follow the teachings of Jesus don't seem to express it with the compassion that he called for.
Exactly.
It's all about messaging, right? It's messaging. So when you present a message, you're trying to create a narrative in order to rationalize the things that you're putting in place, right? I grew up during the crack epidemic in the 80s, and I was also around in the 90s when the 3 Strikes You're Out came out under President Clinton. Yes, President Clinton. Right. And so I was, so it's like now they're trying to change the narrative, right? They want to change the narrative in order to put it in a different, make it different and sort of to try to make things look more empathetic to a certain group of people, but for everybody else, they were harsh criminals, right? They were harsh criminals. And so this is one of the things that I think that she needs to tackle, and pointing back to what Amy said, because her record when she was a prosecutor and an AG is maligned because she was a prosecutor around the time when, in the 90s, when the laws that were in place when she had to prosecute meant that a lot of young men, especially young Black men, were sent to jail for what should have been considered minor offenses, possession, not even necessarily use, but possession. And when they got to possession, you had to have so many grams, and if you had this, like, you know what I mean. And then there were a lot of men who had things put on them, right? They were putting these things on when they would do sweeps. They would place evidence in them to get them arrested. So I think that's because she was a prosecutor. I think people relate that just because she was a person of color, she should have, in a sense, been a little bit more lenient. But when you're operating under a certain set of guidelines and a certain set of rules, that's what you have to go by. It has nothing to do with I like you and so I'm going to cut you a break. It has to do with these are the rules, these are the parameters that I have to operate in, and so this is what I have to do. But understanding that there's a system that's been put in place that needs to be addressed and redressed, in order to be able to get a lot of the people who have lost, a good amount of their life and spent a majority of their adulthood in the prison system unnecessarily, is going to take some time. And there needs to be some sort of redress and some sort of reparations that is given back to all of those individuals to allow them. It won't give them back the time, but it will at least make them somewhat that it's recognized and they're validated in some way. And I hope that is something that she that is put in as part of this reformation of the criminal justice system that has affected so many, whether it's black men, whether it's women, You know what I mean? Whether it's people who are poor, you know, as compared to white collar crime and all of those things. I hope all of those things as a whole is taken into consideration.
Very good point. One thing that I myself have experienced sitting, I've spent my fair share of time sitting in a courtroom in my life, not always for myself, but I would see a lot of cases where you have a young African American male brought before the court for their inability to pay child support. And then the answer for this was, well, you cannot, because you're not paying your child support, you're going to go back to jail. It's kind of a repeating cycle of disenfranchisement because you have a criminal record. You've been placed in the system. You've gotten, as they say, on paper. Once you get on paper, your chances of finding a paying job of any kind have decreased dramatically. So not only have you been economically hindered, then it's a repeating cycle that, oh, because you can't get a job, because you can't get enough income from your job to pay this court mandated child support. And I'm not saying that children should not be supported. That's a totally other issue. But we're speaking about this right now. It's a repeating cycle of incarceration and reincarceration for, excuse my language, a bunch of bullshit. So how do you expect this person to support said child when they are unable to even make enough money to support themselves? And it's just this repeated cycle. So we'll just put them back in jail, reincarcerate them. Go ahead. Yeah. Go ahead.
Can I add something to that? Because there are also some laws that say that you can't live or be in social housing when you have a conviction. So that not only they can't even visit their children in that house because they can't go into that house because otherwise the children could get homeless. It's like if you get out and you are homeless, try finding a job. And try finding a job that you can support yourself and your family. Because you can't be with your family because you have a conviction. So there are too many punitive things in place. It's draconian. Like, it doesn't help. It increases recidivism because they don't get a chance.
Yeah. And what industry is it that doesn't care about your criminal record so that you can make a decent amount of money to support your children or to support yourself? It's probably not going to be exactly on the right side of the law now, is it?
No. Drug lords don't ask for a resume.
No.
They don't ask for a resume. People who like gang members don't ask for a resume or your criminal convictions. So
it's kind of a plus in a way. You know,
our whole welfare system is set up to make people, to keep people underfoot, right?
Absolutely.
If you want social services, you can't make more than, well, I'm gonna speak for New York. I can't speak for other states. Here in New York, if you would like to apply for social services to say, I want to get housing, I need extra help with food, I need Medicaid, you can't make more than $1,300 a month. And in New York, $1,300 barely pays rent.
If that.
Okay. How do you expect someone to live when you tell them they can't make more than this, right? In order for them to qualify for them to get help. They'll never be able to get ahead, ever. And the welfare system is only meant to be a stopgap to help somebody to get to where they need to go to. But they're never going to get ahead because the minute they go over that income line, they're kicked off.
Yeah.
And so now they're back to square one.
Or in worse shape than they were.
The system is designed that way. Another case in point. If you are a lot of women are forced to be single moms. And I'm only talking about New York. A lot of women are forced to be single moms, right? Because the minute that they find out that the father is in the child's life, you're not entitled. They'll tell you, you can go ahead and get child support for you to be able to get the help that you need, right? Yeah. It's purposely designed, one, to not keep a family unit together and to keep you from advancing, right? And they'll tell you, oh, there's so many things that you can do, there's so many opportunities, there's so many this. First of all, you can't go to work unless you have childcare. Childcare costs money.
Yeah,
and if you want a voucher to pay for childcare, guess what? You can't make over a certain amount of money. Yeah, it's like you can't win. You can't win. And so I'm hoping that there is whoever whoever is going to be heading the Department of Health and Human Services, and whoever is going to be heading the Department of Labor, take those things into consideration, right? Because that is a form of suppression.
Yep, absolutely. 100%. 100%. It's like a self-fulfilling trap.
Yeah. And if you need another example, I applied for food stamps in the state of Colorado when I was going to grad school, when I was working on my master's, and I was denied because I wasn't working enough. Well, yeah, I get paid for $15 or 15 hours a week for teaching, but I'm working more hours than that, but on paper, it doesn't look that way. So I would have had to have gotten a part-time job, and then I would have been making too much to get the food stamps. So they were like, you need to get another job and work more, and then that would have gotten my annual income over, So that this is another example, and obviously, I definitely did need the food stamps as much as a single mom does, who's trying to also feed her children. But I needed help. I was, making $12,000 a year.
That shouldn't have mattered, right? The whole point is you needed help, and your income should not be a reason for you not to get help. You know what I mean? Your income should not be. It's meant to be it's supposed to like fill in the gap for you, and it's meant to be temporary, right? That's what the whole welfare system was designed for. It's designed to be temporary. It's not designed to be something that you do for the rest of your life. But unfortunately, the way that the rules are written and the way that it is currently designed, a lot of people are forced to be on it for more, for almost a lifetime. You know what I mean? If they're able to get their kids, into college and their kids are able to graduate and get, a decent job and be able to make the money to be able to get them out of the system. I mean, but that's a long time to wait. And that's if the child can even afford to go to college. Because if they end up going to college and then they got to take out student loans and debt that they got to carry. I mean,
that's another thing.
It becomes like this never-ending cycle, right? Because money talks. And thank you again, Mr. Atwater.
Yeah, and I think
many things.
Yeah, and I think something that's important, especially right now, is healthcare. And a Biden-Harris administration will see it as a right and not a privilege. And that's another thing where it is a binary choice, but this is yet another thing, like with abortion rights. And like with representation and civil rights for people of color and LGBTQIA plus community, it's very obvious that one party sees it as, if you have the money, then you get health care, and the other sees it as everyone should have health care. right? So we also, you know, we were so unprepared for this pandemic for many reasons, but one of the huge reasons is so many people are underinsured or uninsured, right? And we always forget about that underinsured, right? There was once again, go back to my master's, I was doubly insured, my parents' insurance and my university insurance, and I still had to get something, basically this huge growth on my arm removed, and I still had to pay $400 because it was considered cosmetic by these two companies, right? Separate companies, both called it cosmetic, so they didn't have to pay as much. So we also have this, you know, healthcare is not, it would be a right, not a privilege under a Biden-Harris administration. That's another thing that I think that that Kamala would fight for is, you know, that people deserve, you know, you're born and they just give you a Social Security card. You should just be born and you just have healthcare. Why is this even, you know, a thing?
Yeah. As some of you may know, I do work in the healthcare. I see this every day, every day, and not just COVID. I mean, COVID is just the latest specter on the block, but heart disease, cancer, if you get any diabetes, any chronic illness that someone has, this is something that you were born with, or you are genetically predisposed for. And a lot of times people will say, oh, it's their own fault, it's their lifestyle, it's how they eat, it's whatever. It's like, no, people, you are genetically predisposed to these conditions. The way that we live in the United States does not help that. We live in a very toxic environment. And people put off until it is absolutely like their leg is falling off, or their uterus is falling out, or, you know, they can't see. They put it to the point where they absolutely cannot avoid getting into the healthcare, seeking healthcare for certain conditions. And if these conditions had been treated from birth and treated humanely, kindly, with, you know, with care and respect from day one, if people would be in better health, instead of finally when they show up at the emergency department because they have no other access to health care, and they're literally dying on the doorstep waiting, you know, to see a doctor or to get some kind of help or some kind of treatment, then it's catastrophic. You come in into the emergency department or to a free clinic or whatever, you get some doctor that says, well, sorry to tell you, but it's cancer. And if you had been able to, if you had seen a doctor or we had caught this early, then you wouldn't be in this situation right now. Or your diabetes has run its, you know, to a certain point where your kidneys have failed, or you're having heart disease from it. You know, access to health care, access to basic health care, getting a checkup every year, making sure that you have medication to treat chronic conditions, making sure that you have, you know, that you see a doctor when you need to see a doctor, when you have a flare up. Having access to all of these things is in a first world country, we should be ashamed, absolutely fucking ashamed of ourselves that we let this go on. And it's absolutely irrefutable.
Yeah. When it's cheaper to go to Mexico and get your health care and come back, that's a broken system.
Very broken.
And Nessie, were we going to do a mid-roll or?
Sure. I mean, why not?
Why not?
Why not? Okay.
So those of you that are tuning in for the first time, we're just going to plug some things, but then we're going to get right back to it.
Yeah. Okay. So this is the point in the episode where I say thank you to everyone, each and every one of you that has shown up for this. I appreciate you. I love seeing all these names in the chat week after week. Friends of the channel, new people in the chat. It's just a joy and a blessing to me to see you here. So we got some upcoming things that I'd like to plug. I've got a stream in 2 weeks on the 16th with a good friend of the chat, Voice of Geek, and Voice of Geekdom. Yes, we are going to be discussing cult classic Monty Python and the Holy Grail. So yes, we're going to
me.
So get a chance. It's streaming on Netflix. It's streaming on Netflix. We did a little watch party last week on the Here Be Dragon Slack. It was great fun. This movie, it's a silly thing, but it has a lot to say about politics and societal issues in the United Kingdom, especially under the reign of Thatcher. Boo. Okay. Geaullie, you got anything coming up in the near future that you would like to discuss or plug or what have you?
I don't. I am taking a vote. I don't have any at this point. I don't have any inspiration. I'm still working on my mystery of the curtain of light around the heart of winter. But I'm nowhere near having a video on that. So
well, keep plugging at it. We're all very excited for that. You've done some great work. Subscribe to Geaullie's channel, All Hail the Night's Queen, for some sweet asswath content. Manaro, what you got? What's coming up?
I am going to be doing a review of an anime that I watched on Netflix. Well, 2 animes that I've watched on Netflix because I'm a huge anime fan. So one will be coming up this Saturday, and it's on the anime called Dogma. It's on Netflix. It's me. I'm somebody that likes to look at things from a human psyche perspective, and so it's a very good anime that loosely touches on the 7 sins, and it follows a particular character as they go through each of those each of the 7 great sins, and it follows their journey until the end. And so it's a really, I don't know if anybody's even if you're not into anime, it's still a great watch. And the next one that I'll be doing will be on the following Saturday, which is called The Blood of Zeus, and it is a different. It's really different, and it really gives a different perspective of the gods, and it follows one particular character, and it takes it is based on one of the stories that takes. I don't want to give it away, but it is based on one of the stories, but it takes a different, I think, a more of a different spin on it. So that's also a great watch if anybody's interested in that. And then the last thing, me and AK are gonna start doing a review of Watchmen, because I had not watched it when it had originally released, but I have now since had the awesome pleasure of binging it. So, and I want to talk about it. So those are some of the things that I have coming up.
That is wonderful. Watchmen is a phenomenal show. We did some content on it on Here Be Dragons, and AK joined us for that, I think. So yes, I am very excited about that. Aemy, doer of all the things,
queen of the plugs over here. And yeah, definitely check out Manaro's channel. And I actually just started Blood of Zeus, and I'm really enjoying it. I was a huge anime fan in high school, and I still revisit now and then. I really enjoy the animation style. And Zeus is a hoe. Anyway, it's like women just minding their own business. Zeus, you want to have sex? Like, seriously. Anyway, Zeus is a hoe. I did want to plug Steven over at Here Be Dragons. He's going to be streaming in an hour on his channel, and that is going to be really fun. He did his first gaming stream, I believe it was yesterday, and we had a great time in the chat, so check that out on Here Be Dragons. And yeah, I have 2 more videos / essays I'm going to drop for 2020, and then I'll be going into 2021. So one of them is going to be about Lysono Mar, and I'm going to be doing that with Lo the Lynx. They do a lot of excellent queer feminist analysis, and I'm also going to have an essay about Cersei, comparing her to the last Empress of China. I'm going to have Rohan on, who is my favorite Cersei stan. And we're going to talk about Cersei psychology and kind of how she works. And 2021, going to do some sweet, sweet Avatar: The Last Airbender content. And going to continue with my Song of Ice and Fire and his Dark Materials. And I'm going to start some videos and essays about the Poppy War, which is a Chinese-American fantasy series, which I cannot recommend enough to everyone. It is good stuff. But yeah, I also co-host John Webster Film. We stream every Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern, except for the next 3 weeks at 5 p.m. Eastern. We're going to cover all of the Lord of the Rings films. So this Saturday at 5 p.m. Eastern, we're going to do The Fellowship of the Ring, and we are going to have on Dan, voice of Geekdom, Carol, and Carol Brown, I believe is her last name, and oh God, we have a third guest. I'd have to look at the schedule.
Helen.
I'm Helen, the Clueless Fangirl. Yeah. So please check out John Webster Film, all the things. If you go to my channel too, I have playlists. If you want to just watch my Aswaf stuff, just watch my His Dark Materials stuff. And I also have all of my friends' channel links there, so you can check out all of my friends who do good stuff. And I want to once again plug Manaro's channel. She's got some good stuff going on. And yeah, and Cecilia. Sorry, thank you, Aaron. It is Cecilia, who is also from Geeksterillia, who does content in Hispanish. And I'm not sure if Helen is going to be on. She might, but she's definitely going to be on for Return of the King. So please check out John Webster Film. We talk about movies every Saturday, and that was my first co-host experience, and now this is my second co-host experience. So I have so much time, anyone, if you need a co-host. You know, I'm a PhD student who teaches, I just have so much free time, and so invite me on your channel. But yes, I have a blog, and I make videos, so I read the essays to you. You never have to read a word I write. You can hear this beautiful voice read it to you, and then I have wonderful guests on to talk about it. That's all the plugs.
Yeah, and the links to all these lovely ladies, all the things that they do are in the description. So subscribe, do all the things. They're doing great work. And one last thing I'd like to plug is we have what's known as the Here Be Dragons family Slack group. If you are interested in becoming a member of the Here Be Dragons Slack, there's some lovely people in there. We keep the conversation going. We talk about a lot of fun things. We joke one another. We have watch parties. We have a Zoom that never dies. Geaullie, keeper of the Zoom. Queen of the Zoom. Yes. And it's just great. It's great people. We're good friends. If you want to be a part of that, just email us at we3dragons, as the banner says, at gmail.com. And our Lord Commander Stephen will happily bring you aboard. We have very few rules. It's just, peace and be excellent to each other. So, I think that's all the housekeeping stuff. Oh yeah. Hey, like and subscribe this channel. If you like this kind of content, we're going to be doing a lot more of it in the coming year. We've got, the next episode, we're going to be discussing transphobia and turfism. Yes, that's a thing. And then later on, we're going to have our lovely, lovely friend, Kelly Jaded Redhead, and she's going to come on and discuss things like why are all ships named as women and other nautical bullshit like that. So,
and that should be we3dragons@gmail.com. So don't put that directly into your email. It'll bounce back.
Oh, okay.
You guys know how email works. You can figure it out. You're all smart.
Yeah, you're smart people. You wouldn't be here if you weren't smart. And then we've got, later on, maybe a couple of months down the road, maybe spring, we're going to have Cecilia from Geeksterella. We are going to, haven't issued the invite out yet, but I'm really going to get on her about this. We'd like to have her, and we want to discuss languages. And a lot of languages are gendered, if you were not aware. And gendered languages promote gender oppression. So that's going to be a very interesting topic, especially for people who like linguistics. Like, I wouldn't know anyone like that. Would you, Aemy?
I will have so many visuals. I'm going to be writing Chinese characters and showing you all about it. I'm going to talk all about how there are certain characters with the character for female in them and how it's sexist. So stay tuned for that.
Stay tuned for that. All right. So now let me figure out how to get the banner away. Okay. Hide the banner. Okay. Back to the chat.
I kind of look forward to those discussions because we have to learn a whole new way of, a lot of us, and I'm going to include myself in that, have to learn a whole new way of communicating. And I'm a person that takes communication very seriously because, you know, it's not just, you know, sending a message, but it's how that message is received. And, you know, sometimes you can unintentionally send a message that's going to be received wrong. You don't want to be, you know, you don't want to always live in an ignorant bubble.
Mm-hmm. And
so I truly do actually look forward to that because I want to be able to improve how I communicate to others and be, you know, and be more learned. You know, I'm forever a growing being. I'm not perfect and I have not yet arrived until God decides that, you know, I'm a Christian and I do believe in God until God decides that I have, you know, served my purpose on this earth. And so while I'm still on this earth, I still forever want to grow and learn about, you know, God's creations, because we are all truly beautiful creations, and God did not make a mistake when we were put on this earth. We all have purpose, and I am always honored and glad when I can interact with whoever God's put in my path, and I'm so glad that I'm getting cheesy. Okay. I'm glad to be here with you ladies, and I look forward to learning more from all of you.
Yep. Well, Manaro, I just, you know, want you to know you've got a permanent invite to the channel. If you or anyone who happens to be listening to this later or now or whenever, if you have an idea that you'd like to discuss along these lines, anything from internalized misogyny to toxic masculinity, hit me up, hit Aemy up. We'll be glad to talk about it. These
toxic masculinity and the myth of the superwoman.
The myth of the superwoman.
Yes, like that.
All right, Geaullie, great. Aemy, put it on the list. Keeper of the list.
Noted. Keeper of the schedules. John Webster for John Webster Film didn't know what he was unleashing when he got me as his co-host, because I do 2 months scheduled in advance, but even he doesn't know that I have us pretty much 5 months scheduled in advance. But I don't put it down because I don't want to seem that crazy, but we all know I am.
I kind of feel like he sort of knew when he was getting, you know, when he asked you. I mean, I certainly did. You know, it's like, yeah, Aemy, we're talking about patriarchy. I will be burned at the stake if I would be remiss in my duties if I did not have this lovely young woman on with me. Couldn't do it without you. Wouldn't even think of it.
Now, both of you over there getting me all emotional.
Yep. Oh, from the peanut gallery. Yes.
I was actually thinking we won. The Unspun Yarn is about, you know, recognizing women in the fandom and our contributions, but also men are obviously, get your drinks ready. Men are also hurt by the patriarchy, and toxic masculinity is the epitome of that. They are told not to cry. They are told to be the man of the house, right? All of these things really hurts their psyche. And, you know, what if they want to knit? What if they want to do ballet, right? These kinds. What if they want to wear a dress to school? You have little boys that, you know, can't dress how they want to dress.
What if they don't want to de-escalate the situation? If they can't do that, you can never back down.
Bleep the patriarchy.
Bleep it, y'all.
Yeah, toxic masculinity has been a detriment to our society as a whole. In case you don't know, a lot of the violence that you see that take place, I think would would not be here if we allowed people to show feelings. And it's just that simple. Allow people to exhibit and express their feelings. If they're sad and they want to cry, they should be able to do that without ridicule. You know what I mean?
Well, because then it comes out in violent anger. That's
exactly.
how it happens.
And that's what violence is. You feel something and you don't know what to do with it. And you have one or two, and I'm going to probably repeat myself. You have one or two things that you're going to do. You're either going to withdraw and internalize, or you're going to have outbursts and you're going to attack. You know what I mean? And you're stuck in this toddler mode, right? Because that's what children do. Children don't know how to navigate their feelings. So they either cry or they throw tantrums, right?
Yeah.
And
we've been used to that for 4 years. Boy, haven't we?
Right. And if you haven't had the ability to develop, those emotions, or been given a safe environment to be able to, develop those emotions, you know what I mean? You end up with what we now have in the White House, right? You end up with a lot of the militant groups that you see out in the streets. You end up with a lot of violence because men. A lot of men are not allowed to express feelings for fear that it makes them look weak. And I hope this is a conversation that continues to be had to allow this to stop, because I promise a lot of the violence that you're seeing that are, especially in the LGBT, and if I get it wrong, please excuse me, okay? In the LGBTQIA plus, did I get it right? Community, a lot of the violence that you're seeing that are being enacted towards that community in particular, aside from women as a whole, but that whole entire community, is because men are not allowed to have feelings. And when they have feelings that they cannot explain or are fearful of expressing because of being ridiculed, they turn to violence as a way of exerting their masculinity. And I'll shut up now.
No, and I'm hoping with Biden, we've seen him cry about losing his wife and his first wife and his children. He's obviously someone who grew up, and obviously he would have experienced toxic masculinity, but he's come to a place in his life where he realizes that, his need to mourn supersedes his need to look like a man, right? A strong man. And I think also, especially when we look at Kamala and how she was raised she has a sister and a single mom, she was obviously raised in an environment that was about, coping with your feelings rather than pushing them down to the point where they explode. And there are a lot of women who kind of want to be the strong, badass professional women who can appear cold because they don't want to show too many emotions. And I think with Kamala, what we have is she doesn't have to do a lot of the things that Hillary has had to do, where she appeared robotic, because if she would have appeared, shown emotion, she would have appeared hysterical, right? And comes from hysterectomy. It means the uterus. That word alone, hysterical, is related to being a woman. And there's this idea that women can't control their emotions, whereas men can, and yet they enact all this violence specifically because they are not allowed to control, divert their emotions. And control itself isn't a good word to use for emotions. You need to be able to cope with it.
Cope is a much better word. I mean, it comes down to this. I mean, women are hysterical. Men have balls. I mean,
that makes you only, come on. That is a weak spot right there. It's a target. It's a weak spot.
It's very sensitive. It's easily damaged.
Yeah. I want to also piggyback on like Manaro's comment. You see a lot of Black trans women getting murdered because of toxic masculinity, and it's an epidemic because it happens so often. And it happens in their own neighborhoods, and it's so sad. And I think there should be a lot more, a lot bigger spotlight on that. So I just want to say Black trans lives matter, because it doesn't get said enough.
100%.
Absolutely. And I look forward to our future BLP, hashtag BLP, Bleep the Patriarchy, our future discussions of about toxic masculinity. But I did just want to say, since we also are here to celebrate the women that came before us, if you've seen the movie Suffragette, if you have not seen it, I highly recommend it. Those of you who have seen it have seen a lot of the things I'm going to talk about. But you had women who were a part of the movement. Their slogan was votes for women, right? So they had the sashes, they had the cool, oh, I love those turn of the 20th century hats, right? We need hats. Where have hats gone? Anyway, but we had these women fighting for their vote, and Suffragette also showed how British women sacrificed a lot. Women actually died protesting. They also had their children taken away from them. What happened is that the cops and the husbands were buddy-buddy. They'd be like, hey, your old lady over here, she's been protesting. She's one of those suffragettes. And suffragette actually was a pejorative term used in the media. And these women took it on, right? They said, fine, we're women and we want suffrage, so we're suffragettes. So it was originally a pejorative term used to kind of downgrade what they were doing. And so you had women who they would tell the husbands, oh, your women's in this. And the husband would say, stop marching or I'm taking the kids. Because back then, the men automatically got the kids in any, there weren't even custody battles. They just gave it to the man. So you had that. You also had them being arrested and force-fed because the women would go on hunger strikes and they would literally shove a funnel down these poor women's throats and force-feed them. And it was only until a lot of the media really learned about this that the media started eventually becoming more sympathetic to these women. But before that, you saw them being called all sorts of things, bad mothers, right? Troublemakers, a lot of things that we heard during the civil rights movement, right? And these people, they're just trying to, ruffle feathers and disrupt things. And they were said, oh, they're disrupting traffic. They're disrupting, all these things that were said about them, where it's like, no, the vote is more important than all of these things. And so I really recommend that you guys watch the movie Suffragette. And like I said, I will scream it. I will go up to the highest building and scream it out. It was also a white women's movement. The women of color that were in the movement were not recognized at the time, and really now. It is really the story of how white women got the vote. And there's even, I found when I was doing my research for this, I found some historical photos of white women holding a sign that said, no votes for N-word women. I will not say that word. And this isn't even the N-word you're thinking about. It means black in Spanish, and I won't even say that. So no votes for women of color. They were specifically fighting for women who owned property, basically, or whose husbands owned property. And there was also this idea of a household vote. Okay, women, this was the kind of like compromise that men were going to do. How about you and your man sit down and you can discuss, and then you get one vote per household? No, because you could have different views than your husband and not vote the same way he does. And I know there's a certain woman in the Republican Party right now who talked about how maybe we should have household votes. No. One person, one vote. Done. Absolutely.
Another great movie that talked about the suffrage movement in the United States is called Iron-Jawed Angels. And there are a lot of scenes in there that are very much what Aemy was talking about in the movie Suffragette, where women were sent to prison, force-fed, hunger strikes. It wasn't until, like you say, that national media attention came to what these women were going through, the cruelty that they were being subjected to, that these types of those practices still continued, but it brought it to light and kind of turned the perception, so to speak, of what was going on. And I think Aemy and I both share a love of steampunk. The literary genre of steampunk, and a lot of these things, the suffrage movement is a big theme in steampunk novels. It's the time when women are out there, they're campaigning for their right to vote and be part of society, be part of the power structure. So it's a very, very great. I love it. They're not all great, but there's some really good ones out there.
and the image of the suffragette with the sash and the megaphone, it wouldn't have been mechanized. It was literally just a big cone. I'm not plugging my dissertation, I guess, but for my dissertation, I'm looking at early Chinese periodicals, especially those that are women's journals, and they had pictures of women in England and America, and this is still the time when women were still in China were starting to get their feet literally unbound. Literally, your feet aren't broken anymore because men thinks it's sexy. Anyway, I won't get onto that. But, it really inspired the early Chinese feminist movement, these kinds of images of the suffragettes. So they were not just fighting for English women or American women, they were fighting for all women that were white, though we always have to remember that. I always put that caveat. There is definitely a racial thing to it, and a lot of anti-suffragette women were used that as the argument. Well, then all women can vote. Oh my God. Oh, I faint. Anyway, but this was also, I think, a way for the white male patriarchy to make sure that the suffragette movement was not successful. They used white women's racism, right? So that they won't join them, just like this idea of being ladylike was used against women in the 60s of, oh, you don't want to be like that. They're off whoring around with their hairy legs. You can't be like that. You're a lady. You're a proper lady. And they're just, whores. This kind of language, kind of comes back and kind of make sure that women are split apart along racial lines or along class lines. So, because when we come together, guess what? We outnumber men, and they're afraid of that.
Yeah. And let's also recognize that almost every revolution in the history of the West, at least, has been started by women and have been punished afterwards by the men who quickly reestablished the patriarchy after that. But most of the revolutions and the backbones of those revolutions and the backbones of strikes and all that stuff were women.
Yes.
They started it.
Like child labor laws were led by women working in the factories whose children they saw children losing arms at age 8 in the factories. Women were the ones that the backbones of all of these movements. Geaullie is totally correct.
The labor movement in the United States. Yes, very much.
The reason you have a 8-hour day, work day,
40-hour work week.
Yeah.
Also, revolutions, like the French Revolution, and the civil rights movement. A lot of that gets started by women. So just celebrating those.
I have a question that I wanted to pose the panel. Okay, so we are now seeing, so kudos to both President-elect and Vice President-elect Biden for choosing an all-white woman, not all-white.
I accidentally said all hail the patriarchy one time about the name of this show on the Zoom, and I was like, guys, don't forget to join us for all hail the patriarchy. Oh, God! So I totally get you, Manaro.
An all-female communications team, right? And I truly appreciate the fact that that they're putting. They didn't feel the need to have to stick a token male representative into the mix, right? And that these women can stand on their own and as a team to be able to effectively communicate the message of this administration, right? Because if you ever hear me talk a lot, you're going to hear me talk a lot about communicating, because to me, communication and learning how to communicate is something that is near and dear to me, because it was something that I suffered from in my younger years, not having the ability to communicate. And so communicating with people and talking with people and learning how to understand people, because it's not just talking, it's also hearing what people say and understanding what it is that they're trying to say to you, right? Because sometimes when people talk, they're trying to get you to hear them, but sometimes you're not receiving the message. And so it takes back and forth dialogue to get to the substance of what someone's trying to communicate. So I truly appreciate that they were both able to feel confident and he was comfortable. And I don't mean to say that in that we have to make him feel comfortable, but that he wasn't so caught up in his own masculinity that he felt that he didn't have to say, oh, well, we need to stick a guy in there or anything like that. That they were both very confident enough to put an all-female communication scene. Because I think the way I think, I think they're all mothers, and I think they all have children. I think, and so I think that the way that mothers or caregivers or whatever nomenclature you want to give them, how they are able to communicate with children, and I hate to use it that way, but with children, that's a skill that you have to develop, right? Because children don't always have the language to communicate how they feel and what they're thinking. So they only use the words that they know, right? That they've learned up to a certain point. And it's up to whoever it is that is providing that care, or who are or mothering them or nurturing them or fathering them in whatever capacity it is, to be able to truly listen, to hear what it is that they're trying to say, and then to meet that need. And I think women as a whole have a very innate gift of truly listening and understanding what is being said, and being able to translate that to be able to not only validate what the person says, but to be able to move forward and to meet the person where they are. So I truly appreciate it. Would have been nice to see. I don't know if there is, but maybe I'm just not aware of it. It would have been nice to see maybe a trans woman there, because it would have been, at least for me, again, I'm still learning, right? Because I'm still trying to understand when, how the communication works and what the right thing and what not the right thing to say is, because I don't want to be ignorant, right? And I think that would have been great in order, because we have a huge section of the population that can use that ear and that voice, right? In this group of women, they're diverse, but maybe they could have used another diverse woman up there, and but maybe I hold hope that is going to come in the future. Everything starts with a first step. I appreciate that that the both of them are willing to take those steps to kind of shake things up and not allow themselves to be pigeonholed. But I don't know, maybe there might be something in the wings somewhere waiting that I may not be aware of, and they might shock me. So I'm really looking forward to what they're doing. But I say all that to ask the question, what message do you think a lot of the people that they are picking, what message do you think that, and especially to women in particular, do you think they're trying to send? One, and second, what more do you think they should do to address all the women population? Because women are not just, we're not one-dimensional, we're multi-dimensional. And so to speak to the greater broad women population, what more do you think that they can do with respect to who they choose in positions of leadership, in order to, and I'm not trying to leave the men out, but the men have had the front seat for such a long time. And I think I'm so glad that now a lot of us are being pushed to the forefront. But what do you think their messaging should be? I mean, it's good that you put us there, but there also has to be a message. And what is it that you think that they should be saying, or how they should be addressing it as a whole, in order to keep us engaged?
That was beautiful. I just have to say, Manaro, it So I definitely am going to get to your questions, but this idea of communication, if I can just harp on that a little bit, I did want to say one thing, which is that a lot of people make fun of Biden for his speaking. He grew up with a speech impediment, and there are a lot of people in this country who need speech therapy. And so when you make fun of him, that is actually a form of ableism, and you need to realize that if that's what you're doing, if you're making fun of Biden for, you know, kind of not being able to get his words out. And I saw a really sweet video from a little boy who's from Delaware, and he said, I have a speech, and he of course was taking a long time to say this, but he said, I have a speech impediment, you know, and I'm so glad to see someone who can still be in this position. Second, Kamala's a stepmom, and, you know, I love it that they call her Mamala. And they recognize that she's not their biological mom, but they've become a blended family. And I think there's something beautiful about that, to take on the responsibilities of children that are not your own. And I know many women who are dating people that already have kids. I am currently dating someone who already has kids. And it's a little daunting thinking about being a stepmom or being, you know, kind of being a part of a family just by being with someone. And for Kamala to take that on and to say, I love this man and I love his children is wonderful. And I think that is great. What could more, so the message to women and what more could they do? I think one message to women is that and people who identify as women, and people who are born with uteruses, because like my amazing friend Lo the Lynx, they are binary, but they constantly talk to me about how that's not how people see them. They walk down the street and they go, woman. And they are discriminated against like they are a woman, even though that is not how they are and how they present themselves. So I also want to recognize people that are born with uteruses and do not identify as women are also just as discriminated against. So the message, from what I've seen coming from the Biden-Harris future administration, is that you matter, you belong, and you're capable, and we're going to put people that look like you in places of power. That being said, the way that they could do that a little better, like Manaro was saying, is have queer women, bi women, lesbians, women who are like me and don't want children, right? It's great that all of them are mothers. Not all of us are going to be mothers, right? There's an assumption that women are, you know, naturally more predisposed to want children, and that has never been my experience. I have not a day in my life wanted a child. That doesn't make me any less of a woman, and definitely not any less of a feminist. And I love children, but I just don't want a life with children, right? So I would also like maybe women who are like Kamala and have never had a child naturally, but who maybe have taken on, you know, stepchildren, or who also got with someone who didn't have children. So that would be nice. I think it's always better to have as many people in the LGBTQIA plus community. I'm the B in that, I'm bisexual, and it would be nice to have someone who has been with men, women. I'm also, because I'm, you know, not every bisexual person feels this way, but I do. I can be attracted to people that are non-binary or trans, you know? So it would also be nice, and I hope one of these days we do have a president or a vice president or both that are not necessarily cis and straight. Yeah. So yeah, sorry, I talked too long.
Well, one thing that I'd like them to address in these very, very trying times is the wage disparity. You know, women are paid less than men across the board. I don't care what type of work you're doing. And women of color are paid even less than women, you know, white women doing the same work. We need to address the wage disparity, full stop. If you're doing the work, whatever that may be, you should be paid the same, no matter who you are, no matter what walk of life you come from, no matter what you identify as. If you are a human being on this planet doing work, we should all be paid the same. That wage disparity would greatly help, especially women of color, because a lot of times you're in a thing, you know, I had a single income household. I was a wage earner. I was the breadwinner. My income, and I earn, you know, less than a man doing my same work. So that is, I think, should be addressed. It'll help our economy. It'll help everything. You know, if women have more money in their pocket, if you were spending more, so money talks. That's a big thing. Another thing that I would like to see them address. It's been 200 years. It's time for another amendment. It's time. It's past time. And it should not be limited to equal rights just for women. It should be the equal rights for all amendment. If you are a citizen of this country, if you are living in this country, you should have the same rights as the person standing next to you, as the person in every state. We should all have the same equal rights to everything. Full stop. Mm-hmm. That's a big one for me. It's been too long. If we have to codify it in an amendment, so be it. And I look forward to it. I will fight for that.
Yeah, and I did want to just interject real quick, Nessie, because I hear this a lot, of this idea of, whoever's best for the job should get the job. And if it happens to be a man, good. And I actually really think that's a non-starter for me, because there is no such thing as a pure meritocracy. It does not exist. So this idea that we're just going to find the best person for the job does not work. It doesn't work out. And in my opinion, and I put this in the chat, there's probably always going to be a woman who could do it better. It's just the hiring practices, right? And actually opening up the job for everyone. Sometimes that's not exactly the same way. And, I study China. I've been to China. And when I was studying abroad in China, I literally saw an advertisement for a secretary that said, good-looking young woman. Like, really? I mean, so that's not an American example, but you can have the whenever people are hiring, I would hope they would say candidate one and use they and them. And you don't even know if it's a man or a woman. And I swear, if you look at resume, they've done this before, resume, John and Jane, exact same resume. They gave it to groups of people. John got higher rating than Jane did. So there really is not a meritocracy in America. And I don't think there ever will be. We have to have this idea of equal representation. This doesn't mean that the woman's not going to do as good of a job, or the trans person, or the person of color. They're going to work actually probably harder than the white man would have. So.
Facts. Because we've had to work harder.
Yeah.
We've had to.
And it's fine, Stephen, if you say that you think women are better 50% of the time. I'm going to go with 100%, and I will die on that hill.
I would at least say 51% of the time.
Nice. And also, talking about wage disparity, we always want to recognize that women of color, it goes down, right? White women make so many, and that you have brown women, or Asian women, then brown women, and then women of color at the very bottom too.
Yeah. I personally would love to see women of color and black women in particular, just bear with me for a second while I put this out. To me, this goes back to slavery, right? Because the way black women were treated in the times of slavery, that stigma has stuck with us throughout time, right? Throughout time. And I think because of the way that we were treated and viewed, right? And the things that were done to black women over the course of time, from the time that they were first brought here to this country as slaves up until today. We can debate about modern day slavery. I'm glad to have that debate. Okay. We can talk about modern day slavery and how black women in particular are kept in their place as a way of demeaning. And people will give pushback. Well, black women over sexualize themselves. It's because what you see, like when you see certain celebrities and you see certain people on Instagram, and then they're doing these things, it's because again, generationally and societally, this is the thing that they tell them that they need to do for them to be validated, right? And they hide it behind that they are owning their sexuality. You don't need to do that to own your sexuality. I promise you, it's not a requirement. You don't need to overexpose yourself. You don't need to use certain language in order for you to own your sexuality. But because of how we have been presented and treated and used and the exploitation of Black women, even to this day, it kind of feeds into this narrative that we are less than, right? And the darker your skin, you're even lower on the totem pole. So it's a whole conversation for a whole nother time. But just to kind of give some sort of perspective, we as Black women have a whole nother hill that we have to climb on top of all of the other obstacles that are placed in front of us. And I usually tell people I was born with way too many strikes against me. Not only was I born Black, I was born the child of an immigrant. And I was born in a poor family. And so I had a lot of obstacles, and it felt like my whole entire existence was trying to validate my worth and in society. That has been my whole entire existence, trying to let everybody that I came across to let them know, yo, I'm worth it. I'm worth the chance. I'm smart. And, I have the ability. Don't just look at my skin, you know what I mean? Or just don't see my name and think that, automatically put me in a bubble, look at my work and look at how I speak and interact with me so you can see that I'm not just, I'm not just the cover of the book. There's so much more that's inside of me. And I think I would really love to see this administration, do work with people, local groups and local communities and push certain ideology, because everything is an ideology, right? And remove the stigma, remove the fear, tell people that they don't always have to be in control of a situation in order for them to feel better. And I hope that that goes across all across the board everywhere. But just to give perspective with respect to Black women, a lot of people, they say, well, this person, they made it, this person, they made it, but you don't know that journey for them to get from point A to point B. And let me tell you, their journey is going to sound way more different than somebody else's who is not Black, or who wasn't a person of color, or who didn't have the right hair texture, or who didn't live in the right zip code, you understand, or didn't go to the right school, quote unquote school, or didn't have the right education, or didn't wear the right clothes. And I could go on and on. But I'm hoping that this administration, with them pushing women to the forefront so that young girls can see that and not only that young Black girls, but all girls, all women can see themselves and say, hey, I can be that. Because for a long time, we were told that we couldn't, right? No matter what your shade was, what I mean? No matter what your background was, we were told that we couldn't. And the only way you could is if somebody gave it to you, or if you slept with this person, or if you, belittled yourself for, this much in order for you to get it. You know what I mean? And it had nothing to do with your true value as a person. You know what I mean? I'm hoping that all the people that they choose and all the women that they push to the forefront, that all of us can see ourselves and that we can all aspire. And I mostly in particular hope that for all of the younger girls that are growing up, that identify as girls that are growing up, that they will see themselves, and there won't be any fear or any stigma attached to them, just by the virtue of how they identify or how they grow up, that they are worthy. And that's at the end of the day, that's all most people want to know, that I'm worthy, I matter. My difference doesn't make me bad. It just means that I am unique and I bring so much to the table. And all you have to do is just give me the chance to do that. And I'll shut up now.
Well, very
Can I-
well said, Manara. I don't think I could have said it any better. Go ahead, Geaullie.
Because you were talking about wage disparity, and I think that should be solved. But also, people should be paid a living wage. You should be able to pay your rent. You should be able to pay for clothes. You should be able to pay for your children, for your children's education. You have to. You can't go bankrupt because you have like a medical bill. That is, all those things would be a lot better if you pay people a living wage and you give them the chance, because the chances are nowhere near equal. And I hope that with the new administration, that they also focus on, being able to have one job and pay your bills.
Yeah, a living wage, just full stop. That for everyone.
Yeah.
For everyone.
And this is why Andrew Yang, if you want to Anglish, it's Yang, as if you want to know how to pronounce the Chinese name correctly. He talked about universal basic income, and people laughed at him, but he got quite a lot of support because, I'm a grad student. We don't get paid 3 months out of the year because it's technically summer and we're not teaching. So we either have to apply for a grant or beg our parents or partners for money. This is not a way to live. We still have to pay rent 12 months out of the year. And so I think that a universal basic income would not make people lazy, because it would just make them be able to pay the rent. Well, you also have to get food and clothes and pay the bills too beyond that. So it's not going to make people not work. It's just going to make it so that you don't have this constant fear of being evicted. And so many people are being evicted, because of COVID, because they can't make their rent, and the landlords don't give a flying shit about that. They just want their money, and they know they can just put someone else in there that'll pay the rent. And so so many people are becoming food insecure or even homeless right now. And it's and we look at other countries that are giving monthly stimulus packages to people. People aren't stopping working, right? If they didn't lose their job, they're still continuing to work. Others who have lost their job are looking for work, and it's not a great time to be hired right now. So you can't just expect people to pull themselves up by their bootstraps right now. There are economic realities, and I love my parents because they're one of the baby boomers get a lot of crap on the internet, but there are some baby boomers out there that recognize that college is more expensive, that rent is more expensive, right? But those baby boomers that are watching, you can't just go, why don't you just work during the summer? I was able to work during the summer and then pay my tuition during the year. You can't do that anymore. I'm $50K in debt for my master's. Things cost a lot more now, and it's a lot harder to find work. And so I think this idea of, I got mine, you go get yours, like 50 Cent, I'm sorry, but I'm boycotting you now. I'm not listening to your music anymore. You said you were voting for Trump because you weren't going to pay tax. I know he's a fan of the channel. He said he was going to vote for Trump because he doesn't want to pay taxes. What is this? Why are you climbing up the ladder and then pulling the ladder up behind you? If you are successful, you should want other people to have the same tools to become successul. Not this idea of, it was hard for me and I somehow made it, so you're over there whining. You should just get over it and work harder.
Well,
I don't get this idea of what people are just so hung up on what I do. Like, what do you care if I work or not? How does that affect you in any way, whether I work or not? I don't get why people are so hung up on the fact that if I am given a stipend to live off of on a monthly basis, what do you think I'm going to do with it? It's not like I'm going to stuff it in my, well, most people are not going to stuff it in their mattress. They're going to use it. It's going to go back into the economy. That's the whole point. You're giving me the money to circulate back into the economy. It's not like it's not going to be used. And I think this whole idea of people not working and people being lazy, I think it's just projection. In my opinion, it's just projection. You feel just because you work hard, somebody else has to work hard. There's nothing in the Constitution that says that. I'm sorry. And if there is, I would really love for you to point it out to me. There's nothing in the Constitution that says just because you work hard, I have to work hard, right? I was listening to the head of the Federal Reserve, what's his name, Powell. He made a very excellent point. This pandemic has taken away a lot of jobs that are not coming back. So if you had no digital skills, if you had no computer skills, if you did not have, and if you are not an essential worker or a skilled worker, probably the job that you had will not be available when our economy comes back. So then what happens to you, right? You're going to go look for a job that you are probably not skilled to do because the job that you had no longer exists, right? There are a lot of companies now that are noticing that they can do a lot more with less. They can have their employees work remotely. So now they don't have to rent a 10,000 square space office space. They could probably downsize and get a smaller office space, pay less rent, pay less overhead, and pocket more of their profits by having their employees work remotely. Case in point, Twitter, all of their employees now work remotely. And not only that, they are given free reign of how much time off they take, as long as they meet their work responsibilities. And guess what that did? That made the employees way more productive. There are a lot of companies that are now going this route. So what we knew as what the job force that we had prior to the deployment is going to look a lot more different than the job force that we are going to have. And so, and I know that is something that this new economic team is going to get ready to address. So having I like the idea of a universal base income, right? Because everybody needs a base for you to live. The only thing that I would add to that is it should be based on the area that you live, right? The cost of living for where you live. Because definitely somebody who lives in California is going to have a higher cost of living than probably that somebody who may live in Kansas, right? So it should be based on where you live, that you get at least the minimum, right? And even if you do have a job, if you have a minimum wage job, you should still get some sort of a universal base income to supplement the job that you have. Because like Geaullie said, nobody should be working 2 jobs, 3 jobs in order to make ends meet. Like and people should not feel like, oh, that's something to be proud about. You know what I mean? I work 3 jobs, and no, that shouldn't be the case. And I know that's the case for a lot, especially people who live in cities, who live in city areas, and people who, I know it's very common here in New York. I'm sure it's common in California and in other major cities where people do work 2 or 3 jobs just to make ends meet. So I totally agree with Andrew Young's a proposal of a universal base income. And if it's not considered a universal base income, some sort of a monthly stipend, especially for those people who make under a certain amount of money. What that should be, I don't know. That's what economists are for, that they can do that in order for, because again, it benefits everyone. I'm all for the taxes on the wealthy. That's what they used to do prior to the 80s. Thank you again, Mr. Atwater, because that's what allowed for young people to go to college for free. I mean, we had free. I was blown. We had free college. It existed.
Yeah. And they
It
took it away.
existed.
Before
You should be
neoliberalism.
all right.
Yeah.
Educating your young should be a right. Why? Because it benefits the society as a whole.
Yes.
Without
Somebody
education,
gets a rant. Sorry.
form of
Well,
society
people
without
just
education.
back to about the universal basic income or stipend. If people would just have to, all you have to do is look at every year in the United States when people get their tax refund. People who get a tax refund are generally not like super wealthy. They're just middle class, working class, lower income. We look forward to that tax refund check every year, and it stimulates our economy. We don't just take it and stick it under your mattress like Manaro was saying. No, we take that money. We buy things. We buy things we need. We buy things that we can't save money for, because saving money, it's like, gosh, most people are living paycheck to paycheck to paycheck. The percentage of citizens in the United States are generally working class people, are 2 paychecks away from being homeless. 2 paychecks away. You miss 1 paycheck, you take a year to catch up on that, just because of the cycle of bills. And I know for a fact myself, I mean, I work 40 hours a week. I have not received a cost of living adjustment to my pay in, I would say, since about 2008, 6 to 8. I have not received a cost of living adjustment, which is supposed to offset inflation. So added up over the last, 15 years at 3%, I'm making about a third less now than what I should be. Everyone is. You're making a third less. So
Yeah. And there's also this kind of false kind of term of rich people are job creators. No, they put their money in Swedish bank accounts and it just sits there. It doesn't go back into the economy, and they don't create jobs. They keep the same amount of jobs or cut it just to make, because they are not responsible to their employees. They're responsible to their board of directors and the people that they're investors. Those are the people that they're worried about. So they want to make sure their investors are making the same amount of money or more each year. Nothing about their employees. So they're willing to cut jobs, to lay off workers, to cut hours so that they, like, I remember whenever I was working as a student getting $7.25 an hour working at the library, and there was talk of Obama wanting to give healthcare to people working a certain amount of hours, and I believe it was either 40 or 35, and they literally told us, you need to work 34 and a half hours. We won't let you work 35 because we don't want to give you health care. That's the job creators that they're talking about. So I don't want to hear it about poor people, blah, blah, blah. The poor people and middle-class people spend 85% or more of their paycheck back into the economy. They're the ones buying the things. It's rich people that just it's sitting in their bank account, or they put it in index funds and stocks, and so that they are, their kind of net worth is going up, but they're not actually spending the money that they are allegedly worth. And you also have credit, right? Trump saying he's worth this much, he's worth that much. He's in debt so much that is that even really how much he's worth? Because if tomorrow all of the people he borrowed money from, including the Chinese, come and say, sir, you owe us this much, he'd be worth negative.
And he would.
So sorry, that's my rant.
The reason why they haven't called his debts yet is because he's still president, and that's why he was trying to ride another 4 years.
And the statute of limitations on some of his
correct. And his debts are actually due, and he has to pay them. So that's why he's running this other scam of having people donate to his legal defense fund, right? And it was just announced that he raised $175 million. And those people don't understand that most of that money will not be going to an actual legal defense fund. The first thing that it's going to do is pay off all of his campaign debts. Some of it will go to the RNC, and the rest of it, he gets to do whatever he wants with it. It's a slush fund. But,
Let's hope he has a tremendous legal battle in the Southern District of New York.
Oh, you know he do. Oh, you know he do.
He's
He do.
bang.
Oh, he do. And I expect, and I'm sitting here waiting to see who they're going to announce as the next AG, because listen, I'm not asking Biden to get involved. He shouldn't. But whoever this next AG is, I hope when they come in, they've already got names and lists of people that they're going to go after, no matter who they are. Now, I have a few lists in my head, but I just want to see if their list matches my list of people. Because I was saying if I was, before I would even have thought of Kamala as a president or vice president, I was like, I hope they put her as the AG. I really hope they put her as the AG. Oh my God, that would be, I would have been like,
kicking ass and taking names.
Oh my God, exactly. I could just see all those people's like futures flashing before their eyes. If she would
throw a name out there. I'm going to throw a name out there that's probably familiar to you, but I think she would make an excellent attorney general. And we're just going to say Letitia James, the AG for the wonderful state of New York, who has, let's just say it, she has had him by the for a while. Yeah.
Just saying.
I love it. And also what I also love about Kamala is she has, and I'm sure Manara knows exactly what I'm talking about. She has that look of like when your grandma looks at you and is like, I'm not taking any, like during the VP debate, whenever he was saying something, and I'm speaking, right? Like that is exactly what we need, is a woman, especially a woman that will go, no, I'm speaking. And that is our rallying cry, I think, right now, which is that we have been disregarded for far too long. Men have taken credit for our work for far too long. And it's about time that we're put center stage. And I do also, I don't mean to bring down the, badass boss lady. I do want to say something I talk about with Low the Leaks in my latest video. It is also true that women leaders also order drone strikes. I'm not saying that this is going to change the military-industrial complex and we're all going to hug and sing kumbaya. But I think that women can also look at things with a cool head, but also with compassion, while also having the idea, considering national security as well. Yeah. So you don't have to be a hawk. You don't have to be a hippie. Women can be in the middle and make rational decisions about, especially if Kamala ends up becoming president, she'd be a great commander-in-chief.
Yeah, I agree.
But circling back to like women, the rulers in history, and I know the most about, European Mediterranean history. It's like most of the women brought eras of prosperity. They brought, like, if you look at Hatshepsut, she made like a lot of trade envoys, and she and there was less war and more trade and more prosperity. And if you add Tsarina Katerina the Great, she brought Russia a lot more prosperity. And if you look at the age of Elizabeth I, although colonialism, not a good thing.
Colonialism, that's a bad thing.
England, let's talk about England, and for especially white English people. It brought an age of prosperity. It brought an age of stability to England at that point.
Yeah.
And you see, almost every time that women are in power, there's less war and more communication and more cooperation. So
that's why I say communication is key, right? We have an internal gift of communicating. All women have it. All women. And I'm not being being exclusive. I'm talking about all women. All women have an internal gift of communicating, because we are all natural nurturers, right? And nurturers understand, are empathetic. They're naturally empathetic, and they naturally want to do better, want you to be better and feel better, and are naturally driven to uplift, right? And so that's why I think that that's also another great thing that they did by making an all-woman communications team, because messaging is very, very important. You know, messaging and creating a narrative, an inclusive narrative, a narrative that speaks truth, even when you don't want to hear it. You know what I mean? A narrative that speaks to fairness, that speaks to um, what's the word I'm looking for? Where it galvanizes everyone to want to come together and work together. Now, do I think that it's gonna happen as soon as they get there? No, it's gonna be a long road. But if we start, if the narrative and the messaging starts, and it's repeated and repeated and repeated and repeated, and I say that more so for the younger generation of people that are coming up, more so than those of us that are on the top of the ladder, more so for the ones that more so on the bottom, because messaging and repetition of that message eventually gets ingrained. And we have to make sure that the messaging is right, and that it's correct, and it has intended purpose. It has to be intentional, and it has to be purposeful in order to get the positive effect that I hope that we will eventually see with the next decade or so. Because for the past few years, the messaging has not been that great. And even when we saw, even in the advent of when Obama came into the presidency, unfortunately, the messaging got lost, because a lot of people said he didn't really do anything. But what they failed, I think, because they failed to see what it was that he was up against. Let me tell you, they wanted him to be a one-term president. Boehner and McConnell said it themselves. They were gonna block him at every single term. So even if
McConnell calls himself the Grim Reaper of the Senate.
Right.
I mean, come on.
Even if he wanted to do anything, he could not, because they blocked. And that's another thing that I hope they do. I hope they consider term limits for the Senate, for the House of Representatives. I wish they would consider term limits for the Supreme Court. I don't think it should be a lifetime appointment, because our society is ever evolving, and sometimes we need to have fresh ideas, fresh thought, new blood to keep up with the ever evolving times of our society. Somebody who was born in 1920 may not necessarily still be in touch with somebody who was born in 1980. It doesn't mean that they don't understand and they can't meet halfway, but our society is ever evolving. How we were 10 years ago is not the same that we were today. Our messages have changed. Our society has changed. And we need to be able to have people that would look at our society as a whole and enact laws and set precedents that is inclusive of everybody. And right now, a lot of those things that progress that we have made is currently in jeopardy based on who we have currently in the Supreme Court. And so that is important. And unfortunately, even though we had another woman, and I could have said, yay, another woman in the Supreme Court, her ideology is not in keeping with the greater societal view. Okay.
And she soils a good name,
right?
Aemy. How dare she?
And so I guess we could speak to that, right? How how do we how does this administration put forth a message to reach women like Amy Coney Barrett, right? Who have those same ideologies. Now, I'm a Christian woman, but I'm a Christian woman who follows the example of Jesus, right? And Jesus had 2 commandments that he gave. 2, just 2, to love God with all your heart and to love your neighbor as you love yourself. If you do those 2 things, you're not going to hurt your neighbor. You're not going to want bad for your neighbor. You're not going to envy your neighbor. You're not going to kill your neighbor. You're not going to steal from your neighbor. Why? Because you love them as you love yourself, right? Those are the 2 commandments he gives. He doesn't tell you that you're supposed to judge your neighbor, because what he says in the Bible, before you take a splinter out of your neighbor's eye, you need to take the log out of yours, right? So if your neighbor asks you to forgive them, you're supposed to forgive them, right? In earnest, right? Because the Father forgives you. So, and I'm not saying this because I'm trying to convert anybody. I'm just telling you from my perspective as a Christian, how I live my life. And I know there are a lot of Christians out there that give Christianity a bad name, but I promise you, we are not all that way. We do not subscribe to elitism. We do not subscribe to telling people how they should live their life. We only have 2 commandments: to love. That is the main thing. Love God, love your neighbor. It says love. It says to love 2 things: love God, love your neighbor. Everything about God centers around love. And love does not include discrimination. It does not include sexism. It does not include elitism. It does not include you telling somebody how to live their life. It does not include judgment. It does not include any of those things. That's not what loving someone means. And it hurts my heart every time when people say, "Oh, Christian." I was like, I just want you to know, not all Christians walk that path. It's just that there's a lot of Christians who manipulate the word in order for it to fit their particular narrative, to give them a rationale to enact certain things into place and laws to oppress a group of people. So sorry for that rant.
I'm gonna completely switch gears, and I apologize for that, because that was like, preach, girl, I'm so there. And I'm Buddhist, so I'm also not here to convert you, but the Buddha talks about respecting all sentient life, hence why I'm a vegetarian. You don't have to be. I'm just saying that I also respect animals. I respect all people, no matter what they are like. And I think that we could really learn from the Buddha's compassion, just like we could learn from Jesus's compassion. But I do want to say, China policy about China, Sino-American relations. I am really hoping for some better things in the future from this coming administration, because the Trump administration has had China, you're devaluing your currency, which, by the way, he doesn't know what that means. And he also is going, "Rawr, I'm strong. And then his daughter's over there getting a bunch of patents from the Chinese government. So here's the thing, is that you're going to be so surprised to hear this. Trump's a hypocrite. He has this real strong stance against China, and then he goes on to profit off of China. So what we've actually had is a real sweetheart deal for the Chinese government. And what I hope that the Biden administration would bring in is going back to normalizing diplomatic relations with China, not seeing them as the enemy, but not seeing them as our bestest friend in the whole wide world. What we need is to see them as the second largest economy in the world, and to also realize that they are the most populous country in the world, and that they are also not a monolith. Just because the people of China cannot vote for their government, that doesn't mean that they are all for the Communist Party or all against the Communist Party. When I was in China, I met people with all sorts of different opinions about politics. That also does not mean that they are not politically engaged. The citizenry is very politically engaged. So what I would hope is that Biden would appoint people, especially his ambassador to China, who has a lot of understanding about how China is not a homogenous society. It's also not all Han Chinese. There are Tibetans, there are Uyghurs, there are Mongolians, there are Hui people, there are Bai people, there are 55 officially recognized minorities in China, and there are many more outside of that. And I would hope that the Biden administration would bring a more nuanced view of China and how America could stick up for American values and not compromise those, but also not kind of bite ourselves in the butt by saying we won't negotiate, we won't do this. I'm hoping for a lot more diplomatic relations in addition to economic relations, because right now Trump is all about the economics of China and this and that, but it's also about negotiating treaties and negotiating policy, and also not budging on things like the I'm just not, whatever. I guess I'm just never going to be allowed back in the mainland China. I'll just say it. The death camps that are happening in Xinjiang right now, the western part of China. It is essentially, it's not exactly the same as the Holocaust. Obviously, Auschwitz was very different, but they are re-education camps. And they are going into these villages and these Uyghur villages and rounding up all men and just kind of throwing them in there in an effort to fight terrorism. And there are children growing up without their fathers because of this. And it's, so what I'm saying is that we should be speaking out against that, but then also creating economic policies that are good for China and America, and creating diplomatic relations with China that are good for our future and our present, and not just about, making a buck off of China right now. Because the Chinese government is very, very good about making sure that whatever agreements happen are really like 90% good for China and 10% good for the other country. And I'm looking for some good, sweet 50-50 negotiations going on.
I think China has a very good Well, China is very good at making sure that their interests served always. Right? They're very good at that. And they have over time set a footprint in just about almost every continent, right? They've set a footprint. And the main continent that they've been really setting a huge footprint in is in Africa. And the reason why I say that is because I was in Africa for a time, and they have a very huge footprint in Africa because of resources, because that's what it all boils down to, right? Resources. And what America is trying to do is they're trying to solidify their footprint in South America. Why? Again, resources, in particular, gas and lithium. I mean, oil and lithium, right? Oil and lithium. For all of you Tesla fans out there, right? Yeah. So
every battery that you have, every device requires it.
They're trying to be in this they're trying to be competitive, right? And just pay attention in your as Amy has said before, be engaged in voting in your local areas, right? In local elections, with respect to your comptroller, with respect to who is your state senator, who's your governor, who's your mayor, who is your district leader, who is the person that represents your district in Congress, right? You need to know who those people are, because not only do the people in your local area make the laws and the rules that govern your everyday life, but they also work in tandem with the people that are in Congress, with the senators, with the governors. I mean, all of those people work in tandem that make the rules that govern not only your everyday life, but the lives of us as a whole, right? So when you look at gas prices, when you look at the prices that you pay in the supermarket, when you look at the taxes that you're paying on all of those things, it's the competitive and the footprint a lot of these global powers are setting in different areas, right? And that drives the market. Why do you think Trump is always touting the stock market? The stock market doesn't necessarily speak to the economy at your level, right? It doesn't speak to the economy at your level, but in some ways it does affect it, because when you have to pay more for gas, right? That means there's something going on somewhere around the world, and it is trickling over to gas. That's why we have to convert over to clean energy. We have to do that, because that is going to affect our future, our future with emissions. That is why climate change is very important, right? The resources that are being drilled into and dug for, that affects not only the earth, it doesn't only affect the earth and the platelets. I'm getting real chemicky with y'all. I'm sorry. But it also affects, the ozone layer, right? And I'm glad to see that they're taking, climate change very seriously. If Al Gore would have won, we probably would have been way greener now than, you know what I mean? But it is what it is. Bush won, and we've been in war for 20 years. So there's that. I'm hoping that now with this new, we're doing a whole 180 to 360 to having clean. And I mean, all of those things matter. Those things matter. That's why it's very important to pay attention to what is happening in your local area. If you have a town hall that's happening near you, go to it at least once. You would be amazed at what these people are discussing and deciding. That's going to affect you, right? You would be amazed. So don't just pay attention to the big elections. Pay attention to your local elections. What is happening in your neighborhood, in your backyard? Because that, I promise you, if you start paying attention and you start, really looking and digging into the people that are managing the budget in your local area and how that trickles, I think a lot of people that are probably in place now probably won't still be in place, because a lot of these people, they're still there. Why? Because nobody votes. Nobody's paying attention so they don't even have to campaign. Why? Because they figure nobody's going to come and vote. I don't need to campaign. I know I'm going to win. Challenge these people. Make sure that they are challenged. Force them to have. We are in a period of people paying attention. I hope that it continues. And I hope that we all hold our vice president and our president-elect. We hold them accountable. Just don't say, yeah, I'm glad you're in there. We have to hold them accountable. We got to make sure when they are talking out the side of their neck, that we let them know, hey, yo, that's not going to work. You can't do that. Remember, we put you there for a purpose. You need to serve that purpose. We need to make sure that they hear us loud and clear. And we do that through local movement. That's how we do that. We do that through local movement. We do that by having the right messaging. We need to talk to those Democratic leaders if you're a Democrat, your Republican leaders if you're a Republican. You need to talk to them about having the right message. Messaging is important. It's communicating what it is that you want to, that you're hearing what the community is saying, and you're communicating how you're going to meet that need. Yeah. So, okay, I'm going to shut up now.
All right. Well, good point. Yeah. Change starts from the bottom up, the grassroots, the little people, the small people. Change starts from the bottom up. And there's so many more of us than there are of them. Make a change, be the change. So we've been going for about 3 hours, ladies. I mean, I'm sure we could go for another 4, but
well, I'm tired.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's late there for Geaullie, and my bladder's small, so I think we should wrap that up.
So I just want to thank everybody for coming. Thanks so much to my guests. You guys have just done a great job today. I couldn't have asked, I don't think, for a better first panel discussion on this. I'm really excited.
Yes, thank you so much for being on our inaugural episode of BTP.
Yes, with many, many, many more to come. Manaro, like I said, you've got an open invitation. You come on, you talk about any of these things anytime. If you've got something to say, I want to hear it. Cause
ditto for my channel, Manaro.
Yeah, I like.
Come on anytime.
I'm always, whenever you want to invite me, I truly appreciate that you value my opinions and my thoughts. So I'm open at any invitation, as scheduling permitting.
Right. Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yep. So I think that's going to be it. Any last thoughts? Any last thing you got to want to get in before we sign off? Okay. Well, thanks guys for coming in, doing a fantastic job. Make sure you tune back in another 2 weeks on Wednesday night. It'll be at 5 o'clock this time, a little bit earlier because I've got we need to do it at a Euro friendly time. My guest is going to be Dan, voice of Geekdom, and we're going to be discussing that silly little movie, Monty Python and the Holy Grail, and at a date which has not been finalized yet, but we're thinking like maybe 2 weeks ish after that, first part of January. We want to get the holidays over. We're going to have another episode of BTP, and we're going to hopefully have some fantastic guests. We're going to talk about transphobia and turfism. Lo the Links has, I believe, Amy, yep, has committed for that one, so that'd be great.
What's going on this Sunday over at Here Be Dragons, by the way, Nessie?
That's a good question. If you'll hold on 1 second, I will look at the master document. Okay. Here Be Dragons this Sunday. What? It's somebody's birthday. Who can it be? I think it's our captain. Steven Stark is having his 40-something birthday. I think it's 45. That's a bad number. I don't want to put it out there.
Years young. He's 40-something years young.
40-something-ish. We're going to party like it's his birthday. Oh, Sanrixian just popped in the chat. Hi, Sanri. Good to see you.
Hey, Sanri.
Hi.
Well, you better.
He's a baby. He's a baby. He's only 40-something. He's a baby.
I know. He's my little brother. And we're going to be celebrating his birthday. And we've got another giveaway on that we'll be doing on that on Sunday. Yay! For our overseas subscribers. Yes, this is only available to people outside of the United States.
Who won the domestic one, Nessie?
I think it may have been Aemy Blackfyre.
It was. I won a delicious bottle of wine made by Nessie and her hubby. And the international winner will win a whole treasure trove of books.
Right. Some very, very nice books. John Webster Film has got the whole trilogy of the Lord of the Rings films coming up, and that's going to be lit.
Yes, we are talking Fellowship, and once again, it's going to be at 5 p.m. Eastern on Saturdays for those 3 weeks, and after that, we're going back to our 7 p.m. Eastern. And what we're doing for Christmas is the Muppet Christmas Carol on the 26th, so please join us for that at 7 p.m. Eastern.
Yep, that'll be great. Because everybody loves puppets, right? Muppets, puppets.
Yeah, there is no one in the chat who does not like puppets.
I grew up
on
the Muppets.
Yeah, it's great. It's a wonderful.
Oh wait, I think Erin did say though she likes the Muppets. It's just the other puppets she doesn't like.
It's the other creepy puppets. Yeah, I get it.
I get it.
Manaro, what you got coming up?
I'm just gonna say, check out my channel on Saturday where I'll be doing a review of the anime Dogma. It'll probably be sometime around between 4 and 5 in the afternoon, probably earlier because I'm more of an early bird. Maybe I'll say maybe 3, probably 2 or 3. It'll probably more closer to 2 or 3 than 4 and 5 because I'm more of an early bird. Mm-hmm. And I hope you all will come through and check it out. And if you haven't watched it yet, I highly encourage you to watch it. It's called Dogma. on Netflix.
All right. Okay. Well, with that being said, thanks, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye, everybody.